first of all, it's going to feel really mechanical and clunky when we first start trying to use these skills. Okay. It's about taking the time to write things down, to practice having these conversations. So all of the skills in interpersonal effectiveness are basically designed to be used in conjunction with planning ahead to build mastery in the emotional regulation aspect of things. So in other words, we want to rehearse the skill, we want to go over it, we want to practice it, we want to practice having those conversations. Okay. And practice for the different emotional reactions we can have to different things that people can say, because planning ahead to build mastery is designed to build mastery not for the situation, but to build mastery for the emotional reaction we have in that situation.
Sorry to interrupt, but this may be a good place for some role play, because if we just read it to ourselves and we're like, this is how it's going to go, we don't give room for a response, that it's a curveball when it hits us, right?
Absolutely. You can role play. If you've got a really solid mindfulness practice, though, you can actually do that role playing in a mindful way. So what we call mindful exposure therapy, right? So imagining yourself in that situation and role playing it through in your mind. If you've listed the different outcomes, what's the worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario, what's somewhere in between, and you role play those scenarios in your mind, you actually don't need to do that role play with somebody else. You can do it mindfully, but it means having a solid mindfulness practice grounded in the skills of DBT, so that you can imagine yourself in those situations, connecting with your senses in those situations, so you're actually living the situation rather than just thinking about the situation, feeling the emotion as they're coming up and working through the different behavioral responses, the language that you're using in the conversation. And this is why, DBT skills are incredibly effective when used in a way where we're practicing them away from the distress, because that's what builds the new habit. So yeah, role playing does come into play. Sometimes it can be really helpful to do role playing with other people. It can also be really helpful just to do it from a mindful perspective, using imagery work to go through those role-playing scenarios. Do you understand what I mean?
I do, and I want to emphasize what you said about the spectrum of worst, best, middle, because my story may take me to one of those polar sides and be like, I'm only going to think of this scenario because I know what this person's going to say when I say this. It's like, well, no, not necessarily. So if I'm going to do the role play on my own, I got to be really generous in understanding all the possibilities, not just what I know is going to happen when I say this to this person.
Yeah, and what you're planning for, like anytime we're doing planning ahead to build mastery, we're not necessarily planning for the situation. What we're planning for is our emotional reaction in the situation, right? So, if anger is the emotional reaction that I tend to respond with, I'm trying to build awareness for the anger getting activated in my system, not necessarily building awareness for what the other person is going to say. If, I back off from a situation, shut down and start people pleasing, that's a fear that comes into my system that activates that kind of behavioral response. Could be a fear that's coming into my system that activates that behavioral response. So I'm trying to build awareness for the emotion of fear, not necessarily what the other person is going to say to activate that feeling. It's just noticing the feeling so that I can now be accountable for how I feel and do the work around those particular emotions. So planning ahead to build mastery is all about, how am I going to feel if this happens? How am I going to feel if this happens? And how am I going to feel if this happens? So I can focus on the feeling, not the situation.
Yeah, and I get how we're not just doing a deer man to check off the list. This is a thing where, like you're saying, we're going to combine planning ahead to build mastery while we're doing this deer man exercise, so that we know what our emotional experience is going to be when we enter this situation. And I guess we're not white knuckling it and then reacting as the different emotions do occur.
The clip you just watched was taken from the upcoming podcast, A Conversation for Liberation. If you like the content of this clip, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button and turn on the notifications so you can stay up to date with when each full episode gets released. As always, if you want to know more about what we do at the Liberation Place, come join the live online meetings that I facilitate each week for free on Zoom. I'll leave a link to the page containing more information about these groups in the description below. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Take care, be safe and be well.